seen that like Grinch meme?
Yeah.
Where it's at yoga.
I woke up and immediately in my head this morning was that scene from Finding Nemo where they're like, "Good morning, today's the day, the sun is shining."
All right.
Welcome back to our podcast, guys.
Welcome back, everyone.
Bridget, would you like to introduce what we want to talk about today?
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about...
Oh my god! You just like activated teacher voice or something. Hello, children.
Hello.
1. I'm counting to 5. I'll take your seats, please.
1, 2, eyes on me. Today we will be talking about management in either multi-dog households or with aggressive dogs or dogs that are a little bit more particular and need the management and the training side of things, and what to do if and when your management fails, because inevitably if we solely depend on managing a situation and avoiding it, eventually shit's gonna hit the fan.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought we would discuss how to deal with that and some tips and tricks to help you better have a better life with your dog in the house and out of the house.
I guess I feel like any dog, there's always going to be, whether there's aggression involved or not, there's always going to be versions of management that are involved. Yeah. Especially like maybe as you initially acquire the dog and it grows up or something. So even like a friendly dog, management could look like making sure they're never off leash because they don't have the proper training to be off leash. And until you have proper training, making sure you're instilling like proper procedures to make sure that doesn't happen. With obviously aggressive behaviors, you start getting into the like weighing the risks worth versus the management stuff. Yeah. I mean, I guess we could probably share some maybe anecdotal stories as well as like examples of that. So like for my own personal dogs, Lumos, my shepherd, anytime really anyone unfamiliar is at my house, like he's in a kennel. Yeah. He's not out at all. He's not even on a bed stay. Could he be on a bed stay? Maybe, probably. But it's like my house is it's not like an open concept house. So like there's, in our living space to get into our kitchen, anywhere that I could put a bed, he's still going to be in close proximity to people if they're up and moving around and getting places. So it's like, to me, a bed stay doesn't necessarily accomplish what it would need to accomplish in those situations, would be keeping him more at like a distance when people are over. And also like, I don't want to. I just don't want to.
You want to be able to enjoy or host the guests without thinking, like when you, like we've talked about this before, when you go to the kitchen and get them something to drink, or you go to the bathroom or the guest goes to the bathroom, that those sudden movements aren't triggering your dog in some sort of way. And if you have a friendly dog, like you can much easier manage that kind of situation. But with an opportunist, like a dog that's like looking like for the moment, like something's exciting or arousing, they're up, and the risk of them colliding with the guests and having a bad incident is so high that it's just not even worth it.
Yeah. And I think I guess a good talking point as well is like, there's probably dogs that exist, and I'd say probably majority of dogs exist, that if you address these issues and work through it, you can get to a point where the dog works through that problem and you don't have to really use management. You know, there's probably a lot of dogs where they don't need a bed stay forever when people come over, as far as like always being there. You know, they get to a point where they overcome their fear or whatever it is. And then you have those dogs where it doesn't matter how much effort I put into Lumos of allowing people to be in the house, he will never fully tolerate it. He's never gonna have people in the house and be like, I'm 100% comfortable with this.
There's something off, like he knows, he senses something's like slightly off, or it's just not peaceful.
He's just a very, very dominant, territorial dog. And honestly, I like that about him and I don't mind it. And I think that I'm very capable of owning a dog with that intensity. And so that's a part of him that I'm never going to eradicate or get rid of. Could I probably build his impulse control with it a little bit more? Sure. You can always do that. But again, for me, that type of management, the management of a bed stay when people come over, even if he was muzzled, still doesn't to me, that doesn't equal out the potential risk of if that failed. Right? So like you were saying, if I put him on a bed stay, even muzzled, and I have to leave the room for a second, or somebody gets up because they're cheering at the football game, if somebody, whatever, the trauma that he could potentially put someone through from charging at them in that moment or whatever it might be, because again, he's not perfect, I'm not perfect, I'm inevitably going to miss something at some point. I can't manage him perfectly in that situation. So for me, it's like, I don't choose that type of management because I don't like how much risk there is still involved.
And people truthfully aren't used to being as careful as the owner is.
Yeah.
So like for them, like
absolutely.
it's a dog, like, oh, like I love dogs love me. And they're not used to like these things that could set the dog off. Like everybody knows their dog the best. So like people coming in aren't going to be like, oh, if I get up really quickly, the dog's going to lunge at me.
Yep.
They're going to have natural human behaviors.
And they should be allowed to do that. I never want people to be in my house and feel uncomfortable because of my dog. Yeah. And then behave differently. And he would do that. 100% he would do that. Right. When I met my now husband, first time that Tom came over to my house, and part of me did this intentionally because I don't know this man.
Right.
I had Lumos on a bed stay, and the house I was in at the time, I was able to have him a decent amount of way.
Yeah.
And he was on a bed stay. Tom comes in, and the whole 2 hours that Tom was at my house, this was Lumos.
Yeah.
Staring at him everywhere he went. And it's like, and that's what he'll do.
Yep.
Can he be out on a bed stay when people are there? Sure, but that's what he's going to do the whole time. And tell me that's not going to make you uncomfortable if you're a guest in my house.
Yeah, now knowing Lumos, it would be like fine, but yeah, if I walked in the first time meeting Lumos, I'd be like, that just wants to kill me. Like,
yeah, and honestly, probably if you guys came over, he would probably be fine. Because he knows you outside of that context coming in. But like a random person coming in, he won't. He'll stare at you like this the whole time, make you uncomfortable. He's uncomfortable. Right. I have to be watching. Yeah. So it's like, I just put him in a kennel. Yeah. And I don't just put him in a room. I put him in a kennel. And I tell my clients that all the time, where I'm like, it's very easy for a guest to accidentally open the wrong door.
Or the dog, so you don't shut the door all the way, the dog paws it open.
Exactly. It's so much easier for that to have a potential mishap than nobody accidentally opens a dog crate.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, even if somebody, like his kennel is in one of our bedrooms, even if somebody opened our bedroom and was like, oh, I thought this was the bathroom, and he's in his kennel in there, they're not going to be like, oh, and now I'm going to accidentally open up the dog kennel. Right. Like, that's just not going to happen. So I think that there's levels of management that come into play, and you have to pick the right level of management for that situation, for your skill level, for the dog and all of those types of things, because and you have to weigh that against, if this management were to fail, what is the risk outcome? And what's the, how, problematic is that risk? I know that if Lumos was not muzzled, just in my house or on a bed stay, and the worst case scenario happened, someone would be bleeding. So to me, that risk is not worth that level of management. Right. So I just put him away.
Yep.
Yeah, there are dogs that truly are not going to be settled when guests are over, and that's okay. Like, yes, you can work through and counter condition, but are you the kind of person that has people over often enough to kind of condition this as a regular thing? Or people coming over once a month, once a week? how can we best deal with the situation without anybody feeling uncomfortable or getting hurt, or your dog practicing, even if they're on the bed stay, rehearsing the behavior to bolt off the bed really quickly.
Yeah. And it's important to mention too that just because I'm using the most, I would say, severe form of management by putting him in a kennel, in a room, away from everything when people come over, that's not because I couldn't, like, he would be completely out of control. You know what I mean? It's, again, to manage a certain level of risk. Like, if he needs to come out and go to the bathroom, I can bring him out, walk him through, take him outside, go to the bathroom. He's going to be fine. He's not just going to, like, bite the first person he sees in my house. You know what I mean? So it's like, there is still a lot of control there. He's not barking like a lunatic in the kennel when he hears people come in. Like, none of that is happening. It's just, I don't want you here, I want you there type of thing.
Sure.
But you're also just not allowing failure either. Like,
exactly.
You're having continuous success with it. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of rush things.
Yeah.
Is that they rush it too soon, where they just want the dog in the bed or whatever. And they themselves just aren't quite ready or equipped to handle those situations, or the dog isn't ready or equipped to handle those situations. And you get those situations of even the dog, again, like a puppy or something, like a younger dog, right? They break that bed stay and they get that big correction, but now it's like that's that failure. You want success first, and that's why I always tell my clients, like, don't go home and call someone to come over like the first day you bring your dog home. You know, build success with it so that you have practice and the dog has practice back at home, and then we can start to kind of incorporate things as it gets appropriate. But one big question that I always get is when I tell people to, like, you know, kind of do that, or, you know, if it is, you're having a 4th of July party or New Year's party or something, you're having the whole family over Thanksgiving, and just go put the dog away because you're going to be busy talking to people, whatever may be. Biggest question I get is, so when can I have my dog out?
Yeah.
Because people feel bad, which is what you and I were talking about, is that, like, you put these management things into place to make everything safe, and then over time you end up feeling bad or guilty that your dog is in the kennel away from the party, and they're like, oh, he's not a part of the family right now. Good.
Right. Well, and then you also get the influence of your other guests saying, oh, let him out. Yeah, I want to see him. I haven't seen him in so long. You know, what new tricks have they learned from training? Blah, blah, blah. All these things, you know. And, like, I even did that a lot with Sully when we first got him trained, because he was only like 8 months old. So a lot of family members and stuff, like, really wanted to see him hang out, and it just, like, wasn't the time to do it, you know? So is there anything that, like, you guys typically say with that? Is it just kind of like they don't need to come out? They just do it until you feel comfortable, sort of thing?
You think, like, you have to really ask yourself and dig for this answer. What benefit does it have to your dog to be out with your party? You know, what benefit, what's the serving purpose? Because it alleviates your guilt and your, like, guilty feelings of, like, having to put these management things into place. What does that do for the dog? Is the dog going to be like, oh my God, this was so satiating? Most likely they're going to perform bad habits, jumping on people, getting overexcited, pendulum's going to swing one way. Next thing, they're eating the hamburgers off the table. You know, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I look at this too as similar to people who want to take their dog to a lot of places. Like, they want to take them to patios, they want to take them to, like, the dog-friendly bars, or really crowded areas and stuff like that. And I try to tell people that the first 1 to 2 times you go with your dog those places, you're going as a training session.
Yes.
You're not going with your friends.
Yeah.
You're going as a training session, and your focus is 100% on how your dog is behaving in those environments and creating good muscle memory and good habits, being able to hold them accountable, and really focus on that. And then after a couple trips and you feel really good about your dog's behavior, then you set up a brunch and you go to have fun with your dog there. And I think that at home, if your goal is to have your dog out when you have parties or guests over or whatever, you need to be able to essentially know that the first time you want to incorporate your dog in that setting, you have to be 100% on top of your game and making sure that they're managed properly. You're giving good feedback on their behaviors. You're doing your bed stays initially to help them calm down. When you release them, you're correcting any inappropriate behaviors, whatever. And then maybe after 30 minutes of acclimating them to the party, you either put them away if you know that, okay, we still got some room to go as far as the success of this, but I also don't have the ability to focus on that anymore because I need to do what I need to do. Or maybe at that point your dog is in a good spot where once you set those parameters, they're good to go and they can enjoy the party. But you have to make sure that you're not just like flying by the seat of your pants of like, I'm having people over, hope this goes good. It's like, okay, I'm having people over. My goal is that my dog can be involved. I'm going to maybe have my dog put away at the start, get everybody in, then I'll bring them out. We'll do the whole thing, do what we need to do, have them hang out and be a part of it, and then maybe they go away again, you know, for the rest of it or whatever it might be.
So it's like structured, like timeout where, like similar to putting a child down for a nap or like having a stimulation break where your dog's not always on. You're not always on, expected to make sure your dog's holding a bed stay and like whether that can very much depend on temperament too. Like if I have a very difficult dog, like let's say like very anxious, like Buckfield recently, I will suggest putting him in the crate rather than doing that bed stay and having him out, because ultimately he's going to be beside himself to have that, and that's not fair to that dog.
No, you definitely have to look at like, what's my like goal in doing this? Who am I trying to appease? If it's just all about you or your guests or whatever it is, and you know the dog is one going to be miserable or uncomfortable or whatever. I had a client that her lab was from like a puppy mill situation, and anytime people would come over, he would just go lay in the bathroom. And she was like, I wish that, you know, I want him to come out and enjoy everybody and all this stuff. And I was like, I mean, could put him on a bed stay, but like, he's not doing anything wrong.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's just going in there because he's more comfortable and laying down. And I don't see any problem with that. You know, if the dog is performing dangerous behaviors or things like that, and it's not like he would panic and run away. He was just like, I'm going to see myself out. And then he would go away. And so sometimes I think you have to look at it too of like, we can be selfish with how we want our dogs to be engaged as a part of our life and our lifestyle. And if that is completely contrary to like their personality and what they want, that's just not very fair for them.
And like, even like with a puppy, like we were talking about, like I have a puppy client right now and he just thinks that the guests are there for him. He gets hyper excited and it's nothing aggressive or bad, or he's not doing anything egregious, but that level of excitement that he's constantly able to turn off what his owner is saying to him and tune her out because he's so excited to pursue the guests. That right there is definitely something we want to work on, because whether the pendulum, like I mentioned earlier, swings in the direction of these like hyper arousal moments, really exciting, we have to think like when it goes the opposite way, or the dogs aren't happy, or the dogs aren't listening to us, how frustrating that can be, and that we're almost conditioning them that when something's more exciting than us, that they no longer have to listen. So like this like lady in particular, I was like, just put him in the crate for the next couple of weeks as you're having people come in, so he doesn't think that everything's about him and everybody's there for him. And that's worked so much better than her building frustration trying to force him to stay out of bed. We'll get to that, you know, that will be down the road, but right now in his current state of development, he can't handle that.
Yeah, and you have to, with puppies, I'm glad that you circled back around to that, because as where we mentioned this vaguely, I think, in a previous podcast, but like where your training lacks or you just don't have yet, you have to supplement with proper management. So like, with Snoop, when he was a puppy, before I felt confident in his recall and we had worked on it a lot, he was never off leash. Never. Because I never wanted him to feel what it was like to ignore me, and play the like catch me if you can game.
Oh.
I never wanted him to be able to do that. And because of that, I've never had an issue with him where he tries to like avoid me or get away from me, because it's not even a part of his psyche.
Right.
He's like, it's never even a thought in his mind, because I never allowed him to exercise that behavior at all.
That's so powerful. The fact of just managing a dog from never performing a behavior is so powerful and so beneficial, where they're just like, I don't even know how to do that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even occur to them.
Mm-hmm. That was like, with Snoop, I tried it with potty training and stuff essentially too. So when I got him, he's a little Chihuahua, I was so vehemently annoyed by everybody being like, oh, you can't potty train Chihuahuas. Yes. They have to have pee pads and blah, 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 blah. All the little things with little dogs that people make excuses for. That dog peed in my house one time. Mm-hmm. That's it. I said, I am not having a Chihuahua that poops and pees all over my house. He peed in my house one time, and that was because I made the mistake of delaying his potty break by like 30 seconds, because I was like, go in your pen, I gotta do this really quick, and I look over and he's like, I'm peeing. Yeah. So, but beyond that, like, and I 100% credit that to, I never was not looking at him. Mm-hmm. He was either 100% in my eyesight, and I was very strict about his pottying outside with a timer and alarms and all that kind of stuff, or he was in his kennel. Mm-hmm. And that was it. I mean, even overnight when he was a puppy, I was waking up 2 to 3 times in the middle of the night to take him outside to go to the bathroom. I was very, very adamant about that, and I'm so pleased that now I have an adult dog who knows how to hold it and will actually tell me at this point, similar to my other dogs, that he's got to go to the bathroom. Yeah. You know, so where I wasn't confident in his ability to understand that we didn't go to the bathroom in the house, I completely compensated with management of just never allowing it to happen. Mm-hmm. And making sure that I was on top of it.
Like, building those good habits is like so essential, whether you do have a puppy or you're just at home from a board and train program, or you're somewhere in your 10-session package, that you need to start to build those good habits. You have to build the habits that you want to see ultimately with your dog. And, you know, if you need help, you know, a good book is Atomic Habits. I just started reading that, and it's crazy how powerful and psychological building habits for both people and dogs are. Mm-hmm. So Snoop building habits is great.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. No, I was just going to say, like, and it's kind of going back to quoting what we were saying too, with building really good habits also eliminates failure, right? So it's like by doing that, you're not allowing them to fail, but you're also not allowing them to perform bad habits either. So by doing both, you get the benefit of what you actually want them to do or not want to do, you know?
If you don't want a dog who chews things, don't let him chew things.
Don't let him chew things,
Don't let him chew things.
Right.
Yeah.
It's honestly that simple, guys.
Put him in the crate when you leave. They can't chew the couch or the chairs or whatever if you put them in the crate.
And if you don't have verbal control, so another thing I always tell clients with little puppies, if you cannot verbally control your dog and them listen, they don't need to be off leash ever.
Yeah. And that's not like screaming, no.
Right.
Yeah.
And like snapping at
they
them.
Don't care
like,
about
I want that response immediately.
Yeah.
I don't want the response the 5th time after I say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just put a leash on them, have them drag it around. Mm-hmm. If anything, they shouldn't really be wandering around your house or anything like that. Yep. You need to always be seeing them. Mm-hmm. And the reason why balancing that out with the crate so much is that, yes, if they're on leash with you all the time and then you never utilize your crate, you are creating a little bit of an attachment issue there. Mm-hmm. So if you're gonna do proper management, you have to balance it with, could they be on leash and follow you around all day while you do laundry and dishes and cook the kids food and walk to the mailbox to get the mail and do all the things? Sure, I guess so. But also, you're not giving them the ability to be independent and away from you too. So you need to also put them in the crate for portions of the day so they can also recognize they don't need to be involved in everything.
Yes, that's a huge one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like, I've gotten really good. Like, I've had very many years of experience with management, as I fostered dogs for a very, very, very long time, and I've constantly had a cycle of new dogs in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And I've like almost gotten down to, like, knock on wood, but like a science with how that dog is spending the first week of the house, how that dog is being incorporated into my pack, and how I'm building those habits with I mostly foster adults or senior dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And people often think that when they're at that stage that there's no more learning. But again, like building those habits, like I just brought a foster dog into my house, and we used a lot of crate for the first week. I made sure her and I had a really good relationship with the bed stays and the down and the training.
Mm-hmm.
Before I even dreamed of having her meet my other dogs, before I even dreamed of having my husband take a role in that. Like, I needed to check the box that her and I were good, and that those commands were solid, and the way, she had a clear no marker, things like that. And that's really worked well for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And like, even with, I think it's, to go back to even an example of my own dog, the ability to like live and manage with a dog that could potentially have, if your management fails, it's a risk of safety.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And stuff like that.
Yes, yeah.
I think, and especially I'm sure with your history with fostering and stuff, you've probably had dogs in your home where part of it was almost evaluating their temperament.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
seeing that. So there was maybe even more of an unknown of like whether there was a risk of safety there. But even with a dog that has a risk of safety issues, if management fails, it's okay to also recognize that like maybe that's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like specific kind of person to be able to handle that level of like stress.
Yeah.
Because you have to constantly think of the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that can be like very heavy at times, so like, and eventually, yes, I do think that you get to a point, if you're able to do it and do it well, you will get to a point where it's almost second nature.
Yes.
What you do for your management, and you don't even think twice about it. Because you've thought through all these scenarios a million times before, and you just know what's going to happen. Like, for instance, something I was telling Bridget about when we were discussing this topic was so there was like a neighborhood kid that came over and was playing basketball with my stepson, like in our driveway and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he lives down the road, so he just walked down, was like, hey, you want to play basketball? And is literally, as soon as that kid set foot on my property, Lumos went in his kennel. Mm-hmm. And you could be like, oh, well, they're outside, and you're inside with the dogs, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, and typically my stepson is pretty good about recognizing, like, he has to be cautious about bringing people in unannounced and stuff like that. But also, he's a child.
Right.
And he shouldn't have that responsibility is not his job. Right. With the dogs.
Yeah.
And I recognize that, and I don't want him to ever feel that way. So for me, it's like, because then you're potentially setting up a situation, because I've had clients before as well where they expect the child or other family members or things like that to enforce certain management techniques with the dogs, and that is just 100% unrealistic.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I would be insane to expect my stepson to have the mental wherewithal and be able to remember. Because again, he's part of the family. The dogs love him. They don't have any issues with him coming in and out. So it's hard for a child to recognize that would be any different with somebody else coming in. Mm-hmm. And what happens if they're like, oh, you want to get a drink really quick? You want to whatever, and come inside? And again, it comes back to, I never want a child to feel uncomfortable at my house because my dogs are scary or, stuff like that. So it's like, for me, the instant management of he goes in his kennel alleviates any risk whatsoever. My stepson doesn't have to worry about coming in the house. The kid can come in and get a drink if he wants. There's just, and if I am not, sure, you could say, I'm in the house, I could watch, I could keep control of that. Okay, but what if I'm doing the dishes and they open the door? What if there's just
the basement to go get the little laundry?
Yeah, there's like so many variables that, again, it's just not worth it.
Right.
You know, and part of it is I would never want to end up in a position where something happens and now I'm having to like make a terrible, awful decision at that point.
And it's like something that we hear all the time, like from clients, they're like, well, we were having a bonfire, us having friends over, and somebody just came into the house and the dog attacked them. And they're like, but it's not the dog's fault. Like, yes, I agree, it's your fault.
Yes.
Yes. No offense, guys, but you have to like prepare for the unexpected constantly, especially if you have a dog that is somewhat aggressive or has tendencies to be territorial of their house.
Right.
Like, the management side of that is like, you have to, if you're gonna have people over, you have to get a good crate command, and being in a room, like we said, is not good enough.
No, and I think this is an interesting connection to making sure that you are not getting a dog beyond your skill level and not, no offense, thinking so highly of yourself that you think you could handle a dog beyond a certain skill level.
Yeah.
So, and what I mean by that is, if you don't have experience with dogs that can be territorial or things like that, you don't need to get a dog like a Corso as your first dog.
Right.
Because when you, you don't need to get a Dutch Shepherd or a Malinois as your first dog, or a Doberman, or even a Rottweiler, because as you're learning how to be a dog handler, you're going to make a ton of mistakes. And in turn, you need to have a dog who is going to absorb those mistakes, and nothing catastrophic is going to happen, right? If you don't do proper management with a golden retriever when people come over to the house, your wake-up call might be that they knock them over, and you're like, that was embarrassing. I need to make sure I get that under control, right? If you get a Rottweiler for your first dog and you don't do proper training or management, and a person walks in the door and they get bit, that's just a whole nother level of...
Get a couple punctures.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you really have to make sure that like your ability to manage a dog, you're looking at it realistically. And you're recognizing your capabilities. Because yes, you can get dogs that require more management because they're more difficult over time. But you have to make sure you're at the skill level that is able to do that. Like, if you're going to have a dog who needs a lot of management, then you need to be a really skilled, seasoned handler. And if you're not, you need to get a dog according to your skill level. The margin for error with certain breeds is much wider than with others. You know, if you mess everything up with a lab, like I said, the risks are pretty low. You know, if you're getting a typical lab. If you mess everything up with a Corso, you're kind of fucked. Like, the journey back from that, yes, you can always turn things around, okay? But there is definitely, the same way we said, not allowing a dog to rehearse a behavior makes it so that door is not even open in their mind. If you never allow a dog to bite someone, that's so much different mentally and psychologically for them than if they do it, and then all of a sudden that unlocked, you know, another level for them in their brain, and they're always going to have that in the back of their mind, like, I remember when I did that.
Because a lot of times in those situations, whether it's anxiety or reactivity or whatever, you know, it's something that they see that as like a win for them. They go, oh, cool. I just bit this guy or nipped at this person, and they left me the heck alone. You know, so why not do that again the next time someone makes me feel uncomfortable, right? Because it's been, you know, allowed, right? Whatever. Then it's something that, yes, they will always have it as like at least their fallback. You know, so it's something that managing or training them to be able to work through that is obviously very beneficial.
It's interesting, like, I recently took on a foster dog, and I never take on big dogs. Like, my comfortability level is always dogs that I'm confident could not for lack of a better term, kill my dogs. And I...
Because you have a lot of little dogs.
Yeah.
Very tiny dogs.
Yes, I have very, very small dogs, and I don't want to live my life in a way that I feel like I'm scared or putting my dogs at risk. And when my management, or if my management did fail, the risk would be I could have a dead dog.
Yes.
Or one of my dogs.
It's not just like, oh, they might have a fight.
Yes.
It's one of them could die type of
Yes.
risk.
Yeah, so with a dog that I brought into my house recently, this dog had been returned because of cat issues, so prey drive. Something in her notes had mentioned that she may have issues with small dogs. And I was like, what a perfect dog to talk.
Yeah, you were gung ho about it.
Yes. But I didn't go into it thinking, like, oh, I hope this works. Like, I hope that I can do this. I was like, I know that I can do this, and I know how to make it work. And I had to trust my confidence level in those things. So, like I said, this dog was not introduced to my dogs for the first week. When she was introduced, it was constant supervision. I didn't have that initial greeting, and then I saw a tail wag, and the dog seemed okay, and I'm like, oh, that's so great. They can finally be together. It's like anytime that this dog was out, I was, e-collar remote in my hands. The dog was on muzzle to start, and I very safely monitored their interactions. And I was a little bit stricter as far as like the chasing behaviors. So even if it was playful or appeared to be playful, I did not allow this dog to perform those chasing behaviors with my small dogs, because even in fun or play, I don't want that practiced.
Right.
So I had to be really on top of that dog, and it's worked out really beautifully, and I found a really good like symbiosis of like having everybody cohabitate, and I've made it work, but I could very much see how that could go south. So, like, when the dog is being, we're evaluating adopters right now, we turn down an adopter with a cat, and it's not that it can't work. I'm very confident it could work, but it would need to be with an owner that was going into it knowing that risk, and going into it knowing how to handle it, and we would obviously help if the dog did go to home with cats. It's not the end-all be-all, but finding that adopter...
Yeah.
And also, like, if they can get a dog that they know is good with cats and there's not that potential risk,
why wouldn't you want that?
Even better. Why wouldn't you want that, And if you have the option to put this dog with a family that doesn't have cats or small dogs, great. If you can eliminate as many potential issues as possible, it just makes the most sense.
Yep. Yeah.
That was something that even people, those videos of Lady, that pit bull with Binks, the little chihuahua, that I was like acclimating them to each other. People had a lot of strong feelings about those videos, but we had Lady muzzled, and yes, her social experience was pretty like few and far between before training, because she was very reactive on leash, and so he was very apprehensive about socializing her. Ultimately, she wasn't an aggressive dog. She was very intense. Very, very, like, high energy, rough play type of stuff. And then one of the critiques that people had with the videos of the two of them together, they were like, oh, like, if that dog is that aggressive because she was wearing a muzzle, then she shouldn't be around that dog in the first place. And then it's like, well, if you tell them, like, well, she's not actually aggressive, they're like, well, then why does she have a muzzle on? It's like, because the switch from play to prey with a little dog and a dog that has high prey drive can be like very fast, very fast. And so it's interesting, because the same way that you enforce the no chasing policy with that dog and your little dogs, that was what we were doing with her. Was you can only interact with this small dog very calmly. You cannot chase, you cannot play with it, you cannot engage the same way that I would allow you to engage with a larger dog, because the risk of that turning from, maybe it starts out playful, but then maybe the dog squeaks or makes a little noise or runs a specific type of way, and then now they kick over into prey drive so easily because of the breed, the intensity level, all of that kind of stuff. So again, the management that we put in place to ideally create a very successful relationship between those two was muzzling to make sure we had no room for error with that. Because again, the error, if the management failed, the risk is that this little tiny dog could die very quickly. And then beyond that, making sure that we were putting parameters into place. Because again, I think cohabitating two dogs together, you could look at it and be like, but I want them to be friends.
I want to be best friends, I want them to snuggle.
Yeah.
Just once they can kind of meet, I'm sure they'll be fine.
I want them to stay
Once
safe.
meet someone, they're always fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want them to stay safe. And if that means that they can't play, okay.
Right.
You know, if playing is off the table, cool. That's totally fine. That keeps them both safe. So.
Yeah. Like, management can be used in so many different ways. Like, I have a dog that has very arthritic back, and my younger male dog picks on him all the time and, like, tries to get on him. And in the past, when the dogs have engaged in play, my arthritic dog had back spasms, and they were very painful. So now I'm looking at my younger male dog. He is not allowed to jump on his back. He is not even allowed to, like, play with him, because the risk of Nelson being hurt is so great and high that I don't even care. Like, I don't want them playing.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah. I don't allow Snoop and Lumos to play unless I'm, like, actively watching.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have my Dutch
And
Shepherd
that's
and my
understandable.
Chihuahua.
Yeah.
You know, they love to play with each other.
Yeah.
But I do not allow it unless I'm watching.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, an instance with, like, it's not like I'm leaving them unattended, like, unsupervised, unattended all the time. But, for instance, like, if I'm doing dishes and they're hanging out in the house and I hear Snoop always initiates it, but I hear him, like, do a little bark, and then he'll, like, run through, and then Lumos will want to run after him. I don't allow that until I can watch.
Yeah.
You know, so I either stop what I'm doing and watch, you know, and allow them to have their fun, or I stop it so I can finish what I'm doing and then go back to it. Because, again, it's just, I haven't seen Lumos do anything intentionally malicious to him at all, but the size difference, you know, I just want to be as cautious as I can.
And if it ever does happen, you want to get right in the butt.
Yeah, be right there to make sure.
And that's very similar to how, like, I am with Sully too, like my dog. So it's something where, you know, in socials here and stuff, like, I typically won't put him in a social unless I have a minute to kind of, like, stand there and watch as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't completely trust him, and not that I don't completely trust the other dogs that are in with him, but it is something that I will make sure that if he were to even think about crossing a line, I am there to nip that in the butt.
Oh, yeah. Similarly, like, if Lumos is boarded here, like, I don't have you guys socialize him.
Yeah.
You know, but I'll socialize him at times, like, if I'm there.
Right.
But I would never want to put somebody else in a position to have to manage him that way. And I think with the time that we have left, that's an interesting point to bring up of, like, not only making sure that you can manage your dog properly, but being mindful of who you're allowing to take control of your dog, do things with your dog, whatever, and making sure that they're also capable of managing to that extent too.
Pets that are your family friend, your family member that might be watching your dog, like, you have to go over, like, you almost have to think, like, what's the worst possible thing that could happen, and how can I talk that person through it and know what to do in these situations. And some dogs, like, truly need to go to a boarding facility to be able to have that structure. We have a couple dogs here.
Like, I could never have somebody watch Lumos.
Go into your house. And
No. Would he allow certain people to go into my house and take care of him? Yes. And it's not that I think he would, like, attack my mom if she went into the house to take care of him. He'd probably be stoked. He'd be like, great, this is awesome. But the issue is, what if he needs to go outside? What if he's, because he's an opportunist. He takes advantage of that stuff. If I'm not there, and that person doesn't have the relationship with him of holding him accountable for stuff, he's going to be a jackass. He's going to go outside with her. He's going to bark at all the fences, at all the dogs. She's going to try to take him on a walk. If there's stuff, like, it's just the risk of trying to have somebody else manage him in those situations is not worth it either.
Or the situation of two dogs in the house, right? If they've getting squalls or something, right? just because you can manage them both and take them both out to the bathroom and watch them and make sure that they're good, does not mean the dog sitter should do the same thing, right? That we have that all the time here too. It's like, there are these dogs, it's like, just because they're from the same house does not mean they always can be ran together, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you need to just manage it. It's easier and safer for that person that isn't their owner to do them one at a time. It might take an extra couple minutes, but you take that whole risk away from really excitement of being able to go outside at the doorway, fighting, and then something happens, you know.
Similar with like Sunday, like she's never had a mean bone in her body. She's not aggressive in the least bit. But the pet sitter that I hire to take care of my small dogs is just like a big love fest there. She gives lots of treats. She just like does not have the mentality to hold the dogs accountable, which I do not expect her to do, and that's not what I'm looking for in a pet sitter. But I know that I could never leave Sunday at my house, and it's nothing against her skill level. She's very, very skilled. But I know that Sunday will take advantage of her. And I know that Sunday is, like you said, like, one little thing she gets away with, she's going to be like, this person's going to let me. And she's like a complete freaking psycho around food and stuff. And I know very much that she'd get into something. She'd eat it. And even if, like, the pet sitter's allowing her to, like, give treats, like, Sunday takes that very seriously.
And in the context as well, like obviously with dogs that aren't even aggressive, you have to consider things like that. And then being mindful of if you do have a dog that has issues or a certain personality type, to be mindful of the fact that like, okay, so with Lumos, I can correct him, I can do all those things with him, no issues. But I'm also very aware that if people don't have that relationship with him, if they correct him, it will turn and he will redirect 100%. So it's like, I think that there's probably a couple people, obviously like my husband and stuff can correct him and things, and there's probably staff here that could and would be fine. But even to that extent, it's just like, I need to make sure, and usually when people are going to put him in situations where he might push the limits and need that, I'll usually even put a muzzle on him initially, just to cover our bases. And so it is important to keep that in mind too, where just because your dog never gives you problems, really think through, okay, but is there a potential that they would give this other person
when you started learning and training your dog, expect that to be how it's going to be when someone new comes into that dog's
and there's so many nuances.
And a little bit different and more too, because you think of like, if you have a really strong personality dog, but you've trained them from a puppy, so they grew up respecting you, right? Like a Corso or something like that. You might, again, hopefully if you have a dog like that and you did it correctly and didn't have issues, you also have the knowledge to know that that wouldn't translate automatically to somebody else, but you might not be thinking about it, you know, because I mean, there's a lot of situations we run into where somebody in a relationship has a dog first, the dog responds to them totally fine, but the partner tries to do something and now we have an issue.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And they wouldn't even really think of that as a possibility. So all of those different aspects too, you have to consider and make sure that you're just trying to set things up as successfully as possible.
There's so much to this topic. Like, we could easily do a part 2. Like,
honestly, like even things that we didn't get to that I'm thinking of are like
household management, fighting dog management.
Yeah,
so
even like even how to like think for like worst case long term scenarios. Like we were talking last night, which could seem like very morbid and dark, but we were like thinking about the plans we have in place of like, if we died, who's taking our dogs? You know, like if I died, who's taking care of Lumos? Where's Snoop going? If both me and my husband died, what's happening with the dogs? When you have, that seems ridiculous and silly, but more so in the case of if you have a dog with behavioral issues or a temperament that is more aggressive, you have to think that stuff through, you know, because unfortunately I've seen situations where there isn't really a safety net put in place and the dog will be euthanized because nobody else can handle that dog other than those people.
And sometimes that's what's needing.
Yes, honestly, sometimes that is the best option because the dog is just unsafe in general unless those people are around. So, but yeah, I mean, that whole conversation is a whole nother one too of like options that you could have and ways to go about it and stuff like that. But
yeah, that'd be cool.
Maybe we'll do a part 2.
Yeah.
Let us know
if you want to see part 2.
Yeah, or like if you have questions that pertain to this subject that you're interested in, you could leave those and then maybe we'll address some of the questions and stuff. Or if you even have like anecdotal stories about stuff or like what your experience is of like management you do with your dog, maybe times that your management has failed and you've learned from it and what the outcome was and everything too. That would be interesting to hear. But
alright.
I hope you could hear us, good guys.
We're sorry
on the mic situation.
The audio's rolling by.
Hey, people just all wearing the same sweatshirts too.
I know, we're all matching today. You guys are even both wearing jeans.
Oh yeah.
You took it to the next step.
Do the wave.
Peace out.
Bye.